in order to,
Yeah. Oh, that's
she
not bad
likes,
for
she likes
you.
New England houses and Cape House and
Oh,
stuff
yeah.
like that.
Yeah.
And it's a very pretty time of year. It was almost like going back 2 or 3 weeks as we went into the middle of Connecticut. 'Cause Forsythia was still in bloom. Forsythia's gone here. That's the bush that with the yellow flowers. That's early spring.
Oh, yeah, it goes
Okay,
away so
that's
fast.
Forsythia.
Yeah.
It's very pretty. There's Forsythia still in bloom, and Chinese magnolias were in bloom. And then the dogwoods are native, so they're out in the forest. You can still see out and see the dogwoods.
Oh, cool.
And so yeah, it was just a very beautiful drive. And she likes the architecture, so let's drive all the way out the Cape and back. And I can see why they were very smart. Where they first landed, they didn't settle there. Yeah. You've been out of the Cape, like,
It's nice to visit.
Okay.
Not like-
it's not, yeah, I'm glad I don't live there.
How long you been like, for 34 years now?
This is 32. 32. All right. If I was spending a lot of time on anything, it was that last one was spend time on. The rest is going to deal with correction and things that are related to correction, which is where you end up spending a lot of your time, and we're going to try and deal with that. We're not going to get through all the material I've got. But again, you can go online and you can see the presentation the ESO would have on these things. But I want to really emphasize the things that are key so you can implement it in your own family. And the encouragement side, that's that first section. So encouragement in skills and the encouragement side of discipline are critical. You must keep that in mind, that that's what you're striving to do. If you find you're having those days or a week or a month of everything's negative and how poorly they're doing and I'm upset with my kids, it's like, actually it's your mindset, not them at that point, okay? You've got to get your mind refocused on what you're trying to do, and remember, I'm instructing, I'm helping them develop skills, I'm helping them understand what is required of them, I'm helping them develop the ability to obey those commands, and I'm going to use a lot of encouragement before any activity and after the activity. Now, that's what we're trying to do, and ideally, that's all we'd have to do. Mary probably only had, that's all she ever had to do with Jesus, right? The rest of us were born sinners. We got to deal with correction, okay? So what do you do when your child misbehaves? So chapter 11, discipline with correction. It requires us as parents to consider the motivations that are also part of this child's behavior, because that makes a huge difference in what we're going to do with them. What is the reason they're doing what they're doing? So B3 is correction. Okay, B3 is correction. Okay, some general principles. We need to correct both mistakes and defiance. And the type of correction depends on the absence or the presence or absence of an evil motive. So how you answer that question will determine the form of correction that is needed. So, number one, in the early years, you are developing the character of your child. We've talked about that in past seminars. Okay? You're developing your child's character. 2, you're exchanging wisdom for foolishness. Children are born foolish. You're removing that by instilling wisdom within them. So that includes knowledge and the ability to take that knowledge and apply it to life. That's wisdom. 3, a child by nature is self-oriented. Biblical ethics is other-oriented. The tension between the two produces conflict. Okay? They want what they want, but you're trying to teach them to want what others want. There's a conflict. So that's normal. We need to make sure we use that to teach and drive out the foolishness, install wisdom, and develop the character. So while we want most of our instruction to be in non-conflict, conflict is normal, and we're going to instruct and teach, develop our child's character in the midst of conflict. That's what this is about. Now there are 3 phases in life where there's an increased amount of conflict. The first is the toddler age, generally 14 to 40 months. Okay, could be earlier. When they start walking around, even when they're crawling, it's beginning to escalate. But by the time they're walking, you're going to have a lot of conflict. They're curious and they want to get into everything. Correct? You've discovered this. Your children are curious. They're also growing rapidly mentally, so you have that age where everything is why. And not that they're being rude or mean about it, it's just they're really curious, they don't understand. So why? And then it starts spilling over to, well, why are you doing this to me? And why do I have to behave you? And, you know, it starts to challenge your authority. So there's a period that it's increased conflict. You are establishing authority here. The child is learning self-control, to have authority over his own desires. Again, this is one reason we recommend strongly. I was talking earlier, playpens are really helpful in toddler years, or whatever you can figure out to do in a subsequent. I wish they're still making them. But
Is this on?
yeah, that's on. If you, I don't know, you have those wall things, you build a playpen, I guess. Something that restricts them, you just have a couple of toys in there, they learn to concentrate, they learn self-control. It's really helpful for this. It also contains them so they're not everywhere where they shouldn't be. So just another plug for that. But that's one area of conflict. This is the toddler years, a lot of opportunity for conflict. The other phase, and again, it's going to vary a little bit, it's usually 10 to 12. It's just before they're getting into adolescence. They are transitioning from being a child into an adolescent, and that's why there's more conflict. They are having to get through the issues. Are they going to follow parents' values, the values of their peers, or simply their own desires? And that's when it's actually increasing. Now, it may come earlier, depending on how you're raising your child. It could come a little later, but there's going to be some period your child has got to come to grips with what they believe themselves and what they really want to do. So there's going to be a conflict. The other one is going to be in the teens, especially in the late teens. It could be earlier than 18, but certainly by 18, 21. Could be 16 to 18, depending on what you've done with your child. It's where they've had independence, and you have to start transitioning and teaching and treating them as adults. So they're learning to take on all those responsibilities, and that means responsibility for the freedoms that go with it. And you're trying to figure out how to let go, because you know that there's still a lot they lack. But you have to start pulling back and allowing them to make their own decisions. To me, that was the hardest part in my parenting. Not from their standpoint, but my standpoint. Harder for me to figure out, well, where are the boundaries for me? How do I treat them as adult? Because I'm used to treating them as a child. But I need to treat them as an adult. I need to show them that kind of respect. So I had to change what I was looking for. So those are areas of conflict. But again, some of that has to do with us as parents, because we're having to change what we're doing as we're training them, as we're yielding more and more for them becoming more independent of us. And let's face it, after you've done all you do with your children, and they get up that point, you don't really want to let go. Okay? It's like, I'm used to this. I got this figured out now. You're not. And no, I need to let go. And there's the whole anticipation that they're going to leave the house. And if you've done it well, you don't really want them to leave the house. You enjoy them. But your goal is to train them so they become adults. And they leave the house and start their own families too. So just so you understand, there are periods where there's more conflict than others.
I have a question also.
Yes.
Rebecca's now in the stage of asking a lot of whys. But sometimes, or many times, I feel like I'm at the end of myself because she keeps on asking why with the things that she already knew. So
Now you can flip it back.
sometimes I get pissed off because
Well, they also get in the habit of just they're saying why so much. That's all they're saying. Why? So if you've already taught her that, now here's the opportunity to say, well, let's see how much you remember. I've talked to you about this before, and I've told you what do you remember that I told you? Now,
sometimes I just say, Rebecca, don't question that already knew the answer.
Well, don't use that, go beyond that. I know at the moment it's just, you're frustrated, but go beyond that, saying, okay, but we've talked about that. So let me ask you why, because we talked about it. What do you remember? Okay, because you may need to do something there in order to help reinforce what you have taught her. So that's a learning skill. So how can you reinforce the lessons you've already taught her and the whys? All right? As a teacher, how often do you have to do the same lesson? A lot.
When they ask the why, it's like, oh, okay, you don't remember? Let's do it again. And then they're like, oh, I want to do it again because they really know the answer, but yet they're doing it out of really just because they want to get you going. So it's kind of like, oh, you don't know why? Well, let's see. Let's do this again, and then you can explain to me why we do it that way. So then we'll do it again, and then I'll say, and why do we do that? Oh, because, and then, you know.
So you want to reinforce the lessons that have been taught. And some of it, there's just not, they don't quite remember, and that's fine. But, you know, you're also not, you know, the universal answer for everything, you know.
Well, sometimes I
Don't-
say yes, and sometimes I say no, because it's no. 'Cause it's,
And sometimes it can be that simple. Why? Is this, well, because mommy said so.
Yeah.
Oh, and that's it, that ends the conversation. And it can be is, that's enough of the questions for right now, you know, and then instruct them of what you want them to do. I want you to go, you know, here, and I want you to have a sit time with a book, okay? Well, I don't know what your routines are, but your children need routine. Routine is very helpful for those, especially the young ones. And even as adults, we like routine. We want to know things are happening at certain points, and it cycles. You just feel more comfortable with that rather than never know what I'm doing. A child who does not know what's happening next is confused and wanders around and is going to get in trouble. So make sure you have a good routine, and so you can just end that with saying, Rebecca, that's enough of the why questions for right now. I want you to go and give instructions. It's sit time, here's a book, I want you to look at this book. Or it's puzzle time, or we had one, as they got older, instead of having a playpen, we had rug time. It's a playpen without walls. Do not come off the rug. Here's your toys on the rug, you stay there. Chair time, sit time was the same kind of thing, except here and here's a book. And it helps them learn skills of concentration. And they really get pretty creative with just a couple toys. So we've talked about the toddler thing. But that's what you can do with this whole why question. As it gets to you, go back over. We've talked about this one before. Do you remember why? What's the answer? Okay, let's see if she actually is listening to you. So, and yes, you're probably going to have to go over it. And it can be is, Mommy's had enough of this today. No more why questions for right now, but then give her specific instructions of what you want her to do. If you just let her wander around, she's going to come immediately back. It's like, well, why this? Because she's, for a lot of reasons. She might want to see that you get irritated by that. Wants to see how you're going to react this time. Could be genuine interest in something and it's confusing her. In which case you will be looking at, well, then what can we do to help her learn how to gain answers for herself on some of these questions. That's the whole thing about the why questions. You want to try and develop that curiosity, even while trying to keep your own sanity. It helps if you're still sane as you're dealing with your child. Because yes, it can drive you insane. No, right? Okay. So, if you keep, I found it was really helpful to be reminded of the big picture and slow down, take a moment, and go, okay, what am I really trying to accomplish here? Otherwise, you're caught up in the tyranny of the urgent and what is immediate, and you're now becoming just reactionary. This is what happens when I'm reacting to it. Obviously, that's a big hunk of life because it's just the way life is lived too often. But we want to be able to be looking at planning ahead. What am I going to do? What am I trying to accomplish with my child? What do I want my child to learn? What skills need to be there? What behavior do I want them to learn? So keeping that bigger picture in mind keeps you a little more focused on how to respond even when they're starting to get to you. Okay? I hope that's helpful. Okay. Okay. Specific principles, C. First principle of correction. The type of correction depends on the presence or absence of wrong or malicious motives. Okay, what is the motive? Is it a wrong motive? It's a malicious motive. If it's present, we deal with it different than if it's absent. Okay? 2, when making an assessment of a child's actions, parents should ask, were my child's actions accidental or intentional, mistake or malicious intent? Was it done because of childishness or foolishness? Okay, childishness is box B4, foolishness is box B5. Okay? So first we're going to deal with childishness. That's B4, childishness. Now, childishness is simply innocent immaturity. Okay? It refers to an innocence in their motives, but immaturity in skills, abilities, and so they are going to get in trouble. They're going to create something. There's no wrong intent on their part. They just don't know. There's a lack of knowledge. That's ignorance. They don't understand it. Or some things, it's just a physical skill. They actually can't do that yet. Okay? They're clumsy. Foolishness has an element of willful defiance, there's rebellion in there. So when it's childishness, we correct it very differently than if it's foolishness. Now, childishness. A child's playing breaks something. Is it childishness or foolishness? Well, what was the motive? It was an accident. That is childishness. They were clumsy. They actually may be trying to do something helpful. If they're clumsy with it, they stumble and they break something. Okay, that's childishness. If they're doing it after you've instructed them and you know they have the ability and they did it anyways, that's foolishness. There's a difference between they're learning to use a cup without the lid on it, okay? And, okay, they're still childish or clumsy and they knock it over. That's childishness. It's just they're still at inability. Or they go to pick it up and they spill it all over themselves. That's still childishness. They're learning a skill. Foolishness is when they're playing with their cup and you tell them to stop playing with their cup because they're going to spill their milk. They continue to play with their cup and they spill the milk. That's not childishness. That's foolishness. They've received instruction. They can follow the instruction. They refuse to follow the instruction. There is a selfish intent. So there's an ego that's there. See, that's the big difference between the two. So if it's childishness, then here's how we're going to deal with it. First, the C1 there is admonishment. Admonishment. Admonishment means there's going to be a warning. It has to do with instruction. Instruction in Ephesians 6:4, Nuthesia is to put into the mind of the child, as well as training or discipline. It's then applying that, so they're rearing them. So it begins with a warning, that's part of training. This is not punishment. Proverbs 4, hear, O sons, the instruction of a father, give attention that you may gain understanding. So, warning instruction about care of a toy. Don't leave your bike out in the yard. It could get stolen, or it'll get rained on, it'll start rusting. The goal is to teach the child to be a good steward of what they have. You start at your age as we put our toys away. We're good stewards of what we have. We don't want them to be broken. We don't want anybody tripping on them and getting hurt. So we put our toys away. It's the same thing, okay? So it's an admonishment. Childish is that they don't have the skills. You're teaching them skills. You're going to have to remind them of what needs to be and what behavior. Let's put them away. You're done playing. Let's put the toys away. So certainly when they're young, you're involved with that. You're helping them. You're reminding them. Okay? That's going to be part of childishness. Now, with that are going to be related consequences. C2, related consequences. Okay? Because some childish mistakes bypass a warning, and there's an immediate consequences. Consequences must be related to the mistake and be logical. Okay? Now, going back to C1 is toys. An admonishment there would be is you need to put your toys away. Okay? You're working on that, but that's the admonishment. That's a foolishness. They're not thinking about it. You need to put your toys away. We don't want anybody getting hurt on them or them being broken. Put your toys away. Okay? Now it's escalating. So there's a related consequence to it. And it could come in three areas. First is property. Children need to learn to be stewards of their property and anything they have borrowed. So we instruct them with that in mind, that whatever lessons I'm teaching them today about simple things like toys is going to be applied to more expensive things as they get older. What's the old adage? The difference between men and boys is the price of their toys. Okay? If I'm going to be a good steward of my simple things, then will be a good steward of my more expensive things. So, an example. Your child is, let's say they're a little older, they're playing outside. Here's the example here. You call them, they come immediately. You reward them from that in the sense of a praise. Good, you came in immediately. That's what I want from you. You're doing really well there. However, you left your bike outside. You've already instructed them. We can't leave the bike outside. It's out in the front yard, someone could steal it, or it's being left out in the weather and it's not being a good steward. It gets rains on it, it rusts. So now I'm going to remind them, as you should have put the bike away and come in. Yes sir, yes ma'am, I'm putting my bike away, put it in and come in. Because you didn't do that, now there's a related consequence. You don't get to use the bike. You can put it away after we're done with this, and you're not going to use it for however long you think is appropriate, given how often this is happening. The more it's happening, the more serious it is. Because the first time, it's a reminder there's a consequence. You don't get to use this. For your toys that are currently that you're playing with, because there's not bikes, it's the same kind of thing. There's toys they like. They're not being responsible for it. It says there's a consequence. You treat it correctly. There wasn't malicious intent, but they weren't being a good steward of it. Therefore, you're not going to play for it for a while. We're going to put this away. Does that make sense to you? Now you can see where this escalates to the point where they have expensive equipment. How do they treat computers? How do they treat when they get their own car? Okay? How do they treat their clothes? A little harder on boys. They're rough on clothes. So, they put their clothes away. That you can see where stewardship comes, but there's childishness. First there's admonition. Remember, you need to do this. Then it could be a related consequence. But again, the motive here is they're not malicious. They're not trying to do something bad. They either don't remember or they're distracted because they just haven't developed that ability very well yet. Okay? They're not trying to be defiant. It could be privileges. Young children, they're playing. You've started teaching them, instructing them how to play with other children, and they are not doing so well. They're being loud and selfish with their toys. And again, depending on the level of offense, the child could either be warned, going back to the part of what an admonishment is, I give them a verbal warning, or it could be I remove them from the situation. And again, it's not that they're being, there's an innocent motive. Okay, kids are being kids. They're just getting really loud because they're just having a great time. And you say, you need to be more quiet, and tell them why they need to be more quiet. You have a migraine headache. You're disturbing the neighbors. So there's a reason by it, but that's part of the instruction. So if it escalates a little bit, then it maybe is okay. You need to set that aside. You can go do something else for a while because you're not. You need to be more quiet than you are. They're not trying to be bad. Could be personal responsibility. They broke something accidentally. So what do you do with that? Now, childishness, depending on what it is, you could do many different things. It could be an admonishment of how they're playing to be more careful. It could be now more related consequences. Well, you're going to help me clean this up because you broke it. Or it could be as they get older no, it wasn't intending to do anything, but you're going to help pay for it and replace it. Okay? I remember I was probably 6 or 7, and we were playing at a friend's house, and the bats slipped from my hands. I went through the friend's window. And man, I was scared. Oh, man, I'm in trouble for this one. And I went and hid it. I hid under my bed. There was a place we could actually hide under bed because my dad had built a place where we could get under a bed and we store things there. And my dad came and found me, like, So why are you under the bed? So you got, yeah, I broke the window. I said, well, come on, you're gonna come with me. He wasn't mad at me. Because they already told me what, they already told him what happened. He says, well, you're gonna come with me because you're gonna help me fix it. Well, what could I do? Not much. I could watch him though, but he wanted me there with him. That was very appropriate. So it was childish on my part. It wasn't defiance, it was an accident, but my dad said, you're gonna come help me with that. That was a related consequence. You know what? It was a very good thing, because it said no matter what the reason was, even an accident, I actually have a responsibility to help make it right. Now, I couldn't do that myself. I don't know how to change a window pane. I'm 6 years old.
Isn't that talked about in the Bible too, in the Old Testament, the accident?
Yeah, it actually, there's biblical admonition for that. But for a child, it's like, parents are taking responsibility for it. But you're including the child, so you're teaching the child a lesson. That one went deep. We take responsibility even for things we break accidentally. You know what? That makes you much more serious about how you treat things that you borrow, or what you're doing when you're playing someone else. So that's why I'm saying these are very important lessons. So it's a correction, but because it's childishness, there's a different way you're handling it. It's including them. Yes, there is correction here, but it's not, and the admonishment is there. It means it's firm. It may be stern, but it's not punishment. There's a difference. B5 is foolishness. Now we escalate into something else, because now we've got a heart problem. Before is behavior, your learning skills. We're dealing with that. Now we got foolishness. Foolish is willful defiance and open rebellion. The Bible calls this foolishness. It's B5. B5.
What was C5? Oh, responsibility.
Personal responsibility.
Well, before you go there, just a quick question.
Sure.
Like yesterday, the other day, we were out on the water table, because this was, I think, would be childishness, that maybe foolishness tied in. I'm not sure what the motive was there. But he had taken out like this little tiny book, and we were in the water table, and as he was playing, it went in the water table. And then I didn't see it until like afterwards. He's like, "Oh, mommy, my book's all wet, but that's okay. It's okay. I could still dry it. It'll dry." And then, so now that would be childishness?
That's childishness.
Okay.
Okay, had he had instructions specifically, don't take your book near the water.
Well, yeah, usually we don't take books outside, and I guess I was just not thinking, it was like this little book that was nothing, I don't
Okay.
know.
So that's
Okay, that
childishness.
would be
So,
childishness.
but you can see even how he responded is he actually is looking for your help with. He wants some encouragement. Like, I haven't destroyed it, have I? We can't fix this. So you can see there's an innocent motive here.
Oh, but then you know what I did? Threw in the garbage, and then the next morning I woke up and asked where that specific book was. And I said, well, you have to be really responsible with your toys, and you weren't responsible because you put it in the water. I said, so now it's in the garbage. And he cried. And so that was probably wrong. I shouldn't have thrown it away.
Well, you could have done it a different way with
Yeah.
the same action, but a different way. Okay, because
Yeah.
it's childishness. So again, you're looking at the motive of the heart. There was no evil motive. It was an accident.
But see, but was it? Because he should know. We
Should
always
know.
take care of our books. We love and respect our books. We
Okay.
take,
But he had, you may not take your book near the water.
and I shouldn't have really let him even take a book outside. Like,
And once you saw it outside, it's like, then it would have been an admonishment. Then it's like, we don't take our books outside. Let's take it back inside. We don't want to get damaged. Okay? You missed it. Now it's damaged. Okay? Now there's related consequences. But instead of being, you actually include them in it with personal responsibility. On this case, it's like, I'm sorry, it's ruined. This is why, now I'm reinforcing the lesson, we don't take our books in places where they could get damaged. This one's damaged. And then you can include them as like, I don't know if we can save it or not. Now you could include them in as, well, is there a possibility? Because he actually sounded like he wanted to save the book. Well, we
Yeah.
could try to dry it. Let's see if we could put some paper towels and we'll try it. Let's see what it looks like in the morning, if it's usable. Even if that didn't work, it still would have been good, because he'd see the kind of damage actually happen. Then you'd say, it's like, well, it's ruined. It's no longer useful. So then you have him throw it away.
And then I could have taught him how to take care of damaged books, because in the future, library books, things get damaged by accident,
They do.
and we could have.
Okay?
All right,
So,
next time.
but this is why parenting is good for us, is we're always having to think through these
Yeah.
things. But what the key there is, I'm looking at the child's motive, because this one was something I can join in with him and help reinforce so many different lessons here. okay, rather than, okay, it's damaged, like, we'll just toss it aside and do that.
You should-
Because there's more than just that he lost the book, is he knows he was responsible for doing the book.
There's so much I could have done
There's
differently.
so much there, but there's so much, this is
I'm
part
so
of what
busy.
parenting is
I know.
this is what, by the time we're done parenting, like, yeah, I finally got it, and we're done, like, this isn't fair.
There's so much.
And with grandkids, forget it, I'm spoiling them, that's what I'm supposed to do, that's my job.
No.
Feed them lots of candy and send them home.
I did absolutely the same as I could.
That's
No, as a grandparent, we want to help reinforce the lessons or whatever the parents are trying. But yeah, we're learning a lot ourselves in parenting, and I do believe it's part of the reason why God has this as part of our life. We learn so much, and our characters change so much. Because what that requires on your part is, instead of thinking about the book as the object of importance, what do I do with this damaged book? I'll just throw it away, I don't want it on my side. It's, oh wow, look at my son. What can I do with my son? What lessons can I teach him out of this for his life? That's the difference. So we are learning constantly as well. And that makes us better people.
And patience, because I think I was so busy and I had to go do something out, and my mind was already on something I was doing outside, that I was just like, well, you should have been more responsible. And yeah, definitely a slowdown.
If they were 12, yeah,
Not 3.
not 3,
Okay.
okay? And that is part of it too, is the younger ones, is we have to be more patient because it is childishness. If they were 12, doubt it would be childishness. Now it's foolishness. That's a different way of dealing with, okay? So, right for we're hitting hard the childish because that's where you're mostly at with your children. Okay, so foolishness is not acting childish if he's disobedient, he's acting foolish. So it has to do with disobedience, it's rebellion. Foolish behavior, that's the blank there, he's acting foolish. Foolish behavior needs correcting, but parents should not correct all foolish behavior the same way or with the same strength of consequences. Now foolishness, which refers to deception, trickery, disobedience, unwise, rebellious behavior, it can be either active or passive. It starts when they're born. It's bound up in the heart of a child. We are going to help correct, train them out of that. Active rebellion is direct, it's willful defiance, talking back, refusing to accept correction. It's rejection of your authority, or any authority. Passive rebellion is an indirect defiance. It's a more hidden attitude, but it will eventually show up someplace. Sometimes in the face, the way they're looking at you, you can see there's a problem. Pretending, as he puts here, pretending not to hear, pleading ignorance to the obvious after caught in a misdeed, doing something good or cute to get out of doing what was instructed. Some kids are really good at that. Okay? And then you're biting your tongue because you're trying not to laugh because you know you have to correct them. But they're working really hard to get a different response from you. Or another one is, I forgot. That's a passive rebellion.
But sneaky. Passive?
Sneaky is a part of a passive rebellion. You know, there's difference. Illustration used is, you know, you wash the floor and you told them, don't walk on the floor, it's wet. You'll track dirt in and make mud. The active, rebellious, defiant is right through. The passive is going to be, okay? So it's not that they don't really want to cause problems because they don't want to have that kind of punishment, but they want to show I'm still in charge, so
Yeah.
I still did what I want. That's passive. Okay? It's a form of it.
Or like when Raymond says, Joe, say. And he whispers it, and I heard him say it. After we don't say bathroom words, that would be
That's,
passive. And defiant.
let's get his
and-
brother in trouble.
Yeah.
Man,
New one.
mean, just mean.
It's all new. Yeah.
Well, there's a way we deal with that too.
Okay.
You get your brother in trouble, your sibling in
Oh,
trouble,
he gets,
you get the same
oh yeah,
punishment.
same thing.
Okay. 2, the second principle of correction is this: the punishment or consequences must fit the crime, because punishment sets a value on an offense. punishment must match the crime. This has wide-ranging social implications because a big problem in our own society is punishment doesn't fit the crime. Okay? It could be either B, because a child's sense of justice is established through punishment and not rewards, parents must be aware of the two sides of punishment. First is under punishment. You're setting the value too low. Good example here. Child intentionally hits another child with a video game controller, resulting in the child getting 3 stitches. Under punishment would be, okay, you lose the game controller for the evening. Okay, our legal system seems to be set up like that. You've murdered somebody in cold blood, and we're going to put you in jail for a few years.
If you're good behavior, watch out.
Yeah, we're going to let you out really fast. You know, it's under punishing what is there. Over punishing is the other side of it, and is exasperating the child. So, the example here, the child forgets to turn off the light, but normally turns it off. The punishment, no TV, internet, computer for a month. Wow, that's quite a reaction just because you left the light on. Okay, so you try and match consequences, punishment must match what was the offense. Okay, the greater the offense, the greater the consequences, the greater the punishment. If it's something minor, then it's a minor thing. Okay, you try and match the two. Try and relate them if you can too. You can't always, but you try to relate them. C, parents should consider the following 4 factors before rendering a judicial decision. Yes, you are the judge. 1, frequency of the offense. In other words, how often is this taking place? Is this the first time in a month, a week, first, you know, wow, we went a whole hour. That's not good. So, frequency of the offense. 2, context of the moment. Is it something all the kids did, your child was just part of it, or is your child the ringleader enticing other kids to join in? Okay? Joe being told to say a word by his brother, there's a context here. Joe has the least offense. Raymond is the greater offender here. Okay? He's just taking part of doing what his brother says to do. Okay? So the greater punishment goes to Raymond in this case, since you use that example. Context. Child's age. Okay? A 3-year-old who lies is not the same as a 12-year-old who's still lying. Okay? As they get older, the lies have much more consequence. 4, the overall characterization of the child's behavior. Is this the only thing they did in a long time, or has a lot of things been coming up lately? So not just a specific action, but is there something else going on? Is the character, what's being displayed about their character? Okay? 3 levels of offense of foolishness. First, admonishment, warning. Okay? And then in some ways this is very similar to the admonishment warning for childishness. But this is for minor infractions. It's just a verbal correction. It doesn't reduce the need for first-time obedience. But you would not punish a child for a single infraction if he's normally characterized by immediate compliance. If you're consistently warning about the same thing, then this is something more serious. Okay? You call your child and they answer and they come running. And you called and for some reason they didn't come, they went the other way. So you're going to investigate, find out if this is the first time in a long time, it's going to be an admonishment with this, which is the instruction in the stern. When I call, you need to answer. If you don't answer and don't come, understand there are consequences, and you tell them what those consequences will be. So that's a verbal admonishment, okay? So you actually haven't taken any action other than that. It's a warning. What you just did was wrong. If this occurs again, this is what's happening, okay? If it's something that's been going on a lot, they don't get the warning. It's the consequences are coming. You remind them the consequences, and then they understood it, and you carry them out. Okay?
Can you, so I just want to put that into this context of now Raymond and Joseph say back them words that I just,
You don't want.
they're inappropriate, right? We don't say those words. And so they'll say it, but they'll say like silly words and then add it in. Like they're exploring with words. that, you know, I let go and then they'll ask me, oh, can I say Coco? Yes, you can say Coco. You can say happy words, like things that make us happy. Like, so Joel will say, can I say chocolate? You could say chocolate, and then they'll chocolate, and then they'll laugh, and then they'll, okay. So now, for example, the first thing, so when I hear him say a bathroom word, like
Okay.
pee-pee, okay, I can admonish him and warn, oh, remember, we don't say those bathroom words. When you say those bathroom words, this is what will happen, right? And then
Okay.
if he stops, oh, okay, I'm sorry, mommy, can I say that? You know, and then they do other things. That's fine.
Other than to say,
Hour
words
later.
have meaning in a context,
What?
right? Words have meaning in a context, so
Mm-hmm.
I'm just gonna push you to make sure that even these bathroom words are always in a proper context.
What do you mean by that?
In other words, there are appropriate times to use those words.
Oh, right. This is like they're
His-
in the car being silly laughing.
Yeah, and that's what I'm saying is that your correction here is gonna be is because they're being childish at this point, because they're using the words out of their context.
Oh, so that's childishness when they're just being silly?
They're being silly because that's a childish thing to do, right? They're being silly.
But they laugh when they say these words, like poopy, hee, pee pee, coolie, like.
Okay, so now it's gonna be, remember, childishness is they don't know, you're instructing them. That's why I said admonishment here and admonishment and childishness, they match. It's really the first, it's a minor infraction.
Okay.
So it could be either one. So at this point, you're not sure, right? It looks like it's spilling over because now we're looking at frequency, age, ringleader or follower, and overall characterization of the child. What you're seeing here is a frequency, right? It's keep going. So now it probably is spilling over. This is now being foolish, and that's what you're going to start adding into it is, I told you before about this. I don't want you using those words except in their proper context. This is not it. You two are being silly. Okay, the silliness is childishness. You two are being silly and you're not being careful, and that's going to be going to Raymond, because he's the ringleader.
Yeah.
Okay? Raymond is, you know better. If you continue this, so here's the admonishment. Remember, it's also a warning. Admonishment is, you did wrong. Warning is, this is the consequence if this continues. So now it's going to be a warning. Raymond, you continue this, you will be punished with whatever it is that you decide is going to be appropriate to that.
Right.
Because what you just did is, I think it's important to understand, admonishment, childishness, or foolishness. At that stage, you're often kind of questioning because you're not really sure what the motive is. Okay? That's why it's really the same. I'm reminding them this is inappropriate, this is not right, this is wrong. As you can see, frequency is increasing. They should know better. At least you think they should know better. I'm going to bring in an extra step here. There's a warning now. You continue this and here's the consequences. Okay, so that's how you don't have to be that concerned, which it is at that level. It's just as you feel this is moving more towards foolishness, you're going to bring the extra warning. Here's the consequences. I don't want you doing this.
So like an hour later, they're playing, all of a sudden they get silly again, and I hear that word. Now I don't move to the admonishing and warning. Now I go right to when I said, you know.
Well, I would ask them this first, is like, do you remember what I told you? What did I say about using those words? So he comes back and says, well, you told me not to use them. And did you use them? Yes. Should you use them? No. Okay, here's the consequence. But because this is really something that's still early on, the consequences aren't going to be severe.
Oh, really?
Well, no, not at that stage.
Okay.
It's not like he's walking up to you and going, you know, that
No,
is
they don't do
defiant. That's just,
Yeah, no.
okay, you're looking at the motive of the heart, okay? And that's what you're after. What are they exhibiting about what's in their heart? So childishness, they're not trying to do anything evil. Spilling over to foolishness, the part of the evil here is they're not paying attention to your direction.
See, but isn't it evil if he like in my mind, I think that in their heart, in his heart, does he know, okay, mommy's saying that this is not a word I should be using because it's not a
Yes.
kind word. I shouldn't use it around other people and then bring other kids into it. So to me, that's like, is he now just doing it because he knows it's wrong to do? And that's evil?
Yeah, that's why it's moved up to the next level. It's admonishment and an action. So what you're seeing here is you're seeing a rising rebellion in him. Now, part of that rebellion is the evil. He's not paying attention to your instruction.
Okay.
But because this is not, so it's not frequent, it seems to be rising in frequency.
Yeah.
What's his general character in obeying you? First time obedience.
Yeah,
It's usually pretty good. So it's not like you got a kid who's ready to, do
Just
mass
bother
murder at 3 years old. So the action is, it's gonna be there, something has to be done, but it's not gonna be as severe as it will be later if he continues. If you told him not to use these words, and then he looks at you and defiantly goes, and says it anyways, see, that's defiance, that's open rebellion against you. That's going to be worse. That's 3, consequential punishment. So that's why there's 3 levels of offense here, and they will escalate depending on what you're perceiving of the motive of their heart. The worse their motive, the worse their defiance, the worse their rebellion, then it's stronger. If you see it's not sure if it's childishness or foolishness, well, it's just admonishment. You see it looks like it's moving into foolishness because it's coming up more, then there's going to be an action. And they give some good scenarios here. So more, you got a verbal reprimand, and then whatever this behavior is, it could be old habits, whatever the behavior is becoming more common, old habits reemerging. Yesterday's warnings not heeded. You told him an hour earlier, and now he's not paying attention, so that fits right here. Okay. Example 1. Child was called, did not respond, ran the other way. Second time in an hour, then this be in other areas. Okay, a gentle swat, not a spanking, just a reminder. Okay, just one of those, I told you, whack. It's just not even, there's no sting to it, there's no pain, and it's just a reminder it's going to escalate. Okay, that would be 1. Another one, reflective timeout. The goal of reflective timeout, help the child become prudent, foresee evil, avoid punishment by doing what is right. Directed to think about what they've done, about to do, consider what they should have done. That would be 1. So that's not timeout as used in the school systems. Where you don't get to participate in this. This is, I want you to sit there, I want you to think about this, because we're going to talk about it. That could be it, it's Raymond. You're going to sit there and you want to think about what kind of words we use and why we use it. Because I'm going to come back in a little bit and we're going to talk about that. Because I can see you're starting to use these words more. You're going to talk about silly talk. When do we do it? When we don't do it. So that's a little more consequence.
So that could be, because that's what I use. If he says it again, he goes and he sits in his timeout, and then.
And to do what?
Because he's in trouble for saying that word.
Okay, but what do you?
I go back and I
Okay.
explain it to him why he's in timeout, and he says it. What kind of words do we say when we want to be
Okay.
silly? And
Yeah, so I'm going to use the term reflective timeout to keep it distinguished from what happens at schools and the
see, I think
modern
I do it in
things.
an angry tone and voice because I'm so angry that he now an hour later he just said it. So it's like now you can go and take a break.
It's okay, you can be angry,
Okay.
and you can be stern,
Yeah.
okay? And then he knows, okay, this is serious, and he's going to be sit there with a little more, oh no, I'm in trouble. Why am I in trouble? Oh no, I did this again. It's okay. Hopefully it's going to work in his heart, so by the time you come and talk to him, ideally he's going to be brokenhearted. I'm sorry, Mommy. I know I shouldn't say those words.
Yeah.
Okay? Which will definitely elicit different response from you, right?
Yeah. Well,
If he's smart, he'll know how to do that.
yeah, I don't know if he learned that, but
But hopefully that's what reflective timeout
That's a
does.
lot.
You start thinking about and contemplating, what did I do wrong? Why is that wrong? Because then you're going to come back and talk about it. So I want them to reflect about what the problem is.
and you're right. I think it's how you make time out though, because I do use the reflective timeout in the school a lot for those kids that are on the carpet and they're not sitting right. And you know what? You're gonna go back into take a break, and then we talk about it and they come back. But I feel like now I have to make sure I'm not overusing it, but doing it in such a negative way where timeouts should be, like you said, a reflective, not like a scary place and like. Yeah.
I'm there to think about it, because it's
Yeah.
part of, remember, all you've done at this point, you're just escalated from a verbal admonishment to, it's more serious now, okay? It could just be a reminder, just a whack on the butt because you know where you're going with this, but it could be, okay, you're gonna sit there and think about it. It could also be another scenario that was used, kids are playing and they're not careful where they're stepping, and they're playing with their ball, the ball's going off the flowers, they're stepping on the flowers. So you warn them, I don't want you playing where the ball's kicking the flowers. I don't want the flowers ruined. So they get excited, they're knocking it in, and they're stepping on it again. Now it's like, you know, you can go sit over there and think about it for a while. How to play properly and how to protect the things of other people's property. You know, those are mommy's flowers, not your flowers. Those are flowers so everybody can enjoy the beauty of them, and you're wrecking them. Okay, you need to learn how to play better and not do that. Or if the ball goes in there, how to be careful. You're not doing that, so sit there and think about it.
Yeah, like in the sandbox room and put the sand and threw it at Joe. Immediately I said, nope, now you can sit on the bench. You're gonna
Yeah.
sit here because we don't throw sand on. Remember, we keep the sand on the ground and,
Yeah, okay, so that's what we're trying to do with that. We want them to think through that. He has a note in here. Cultural practice timeouts, which are often the primary method of punishment, is one of the least satisfactory types of consequence for two reasons. One, first, a child seldom associates sitting in the chair with the act for which he is being punished, since frustration of the parent is usually a more dominant factor in the situation than the act itself, i.e., I'm frustrated with you, I'm mad, so just go sit over there. We're not even sure why they're sitting there. Okay, so that's number one. Second, little or no punishment equivalent. A 5-minute timeout for hitting his sister with a hard plastic bat teaches the wrong value for the offense. So this reflective timeout is only saying something's escalating here, and before you get into serious trouble here, I want you to think about it. That's what we're talking about with reflective timeout. Okay? Think about this before you take action, because you're in danger of being in real trouble. Right now, it's escalating. That's the idea of what we're talking about, all right? Okay, third is consequential punishment. Offenses that require the full weight of the law. This level of offense refers to routine acts and attitudes, rebellion, active or passive, to moral violations against others, including siblings, peers, parents, and others in authority. Okay, example, child is called, looks at you and says no, and runs the other way. Child is told to be careful with the toy, they look at you and they throw the toy down. In other words, there's a direct defiance here. Don't walk into the kitchen, I just washed it. Stomp, stomp, stomp. That's defiance, okay? Don't kick your ball into the flowers. I don't want the flowers ruined. And they kick the ball in there on purpose. Okay, this is active defiance. So, and obviously, you know, you can see these meld into each other. They slide into each other. So you're always making a judgment call about exactly where is this. So if it's minor infraction, not characterized, I'm going to admonish you. Okay, I may escalate this a bit with some kind of action, maybe a little swat, just to remind you, look, I'm watching you, you're in trouble. Reflective timeout. You sit there and think about it before you're going to be in trouble. Now, there's going to have to be some kind of consequential punishment because it has escalated to the point where there's a defiance. Now, again, defiance could be active or passive. The passive could be, well, I didn't hear you. Even how you say it says something about the attitude, right? Well, I didn't hear you, as opposed to, oh, I'm so sorry, I didn't hear you. Big difference, right? So that means there has to be pain. Okay, that's F1. Pain. And again, pain is a gift from God because it lets us know something is wrong. Leprosy, the problem with leprosy is you don't feel the pain anymore, and so you actually physically damage yourself, rub off your nose, use your fingers, all sorts of things, because you can't feel pain. So pain's a good thing, and we're going to use that as part of our consequences and punishment. All right. Anybody need a break? No?
Can you tell me number 2, blanket action? That was one we were talking about, I shouldn't write down. Oh, no, isn't it admonishment, warning is number 1?
Admonishment, warning, admonishment, and action.
Oh, admonishment and action, oh, because there's a little action of this or reflective
It could be
timeout?
both. It's
Both.
There's a verbal reminder, okay, a verbal reprimand, a verbal correction there, plus something else.
So like the incident with it was frequent, I did the first warning, remember, and then happened an hour later,
Now there's an action.
here's the consequence. So he went, I said, wait for me to go into your room. So they both went in their rooms. They're waiting before in their little chairs. Now, but it was more of like like pull your pants down, and I did, but this is what Raymond said. He goes, okay, mommy, it's not gonna hurt. And so I'm like, okay.
Okay, we're gonna get into pain.
All right. And because then afterwards he goes, thank you, Mommy. And I'm like, what? Like this is the first time we ever
Okay.
did that. So I'm like,
Yeah, that's
all
not a
right.
reflective timeout.
Okay, no, I know, because it wasn't that quick, like boom. And there's sometimes I just send him to timeout. I just have to be more, I'm all over the
Okay,
place with
I'm gonna
this.
go over that again, okay, because we wanna make sure we're thinking through what we're doing and why we're doing it.
Yeah.
It's fine to put them in the chair and you wait for me, but you're going to get punished. And this is the punishment, okay? And that is gonna include the physical pain of an artificial consequence, which, that's chastisement.
Right.
Okay, that's an artificial punishment.
Right.
It's artificially induced pain. So they're gonna sit there and get ready for it while you calm down.
And that's what he
Okay.
did. Yeah.
So, but I'm just gonna go back over the scenario. So, first is, he said a word he shouldn't have said, and you verbally reprimand him. That's an admonishment.
God, the first
Remember, boys, we don't use those. You two are being silly, and you're spilling over and saying some things I don't want you saying. We don't use those words. All right? We don't use words we don't know the meaning of either. You know, you can expand a little bit on how to use language properly. He does it again, and it's very soon. It's okay, you're going to sit there and reflect on what you did wrong, and I'm going to come in and we're going to talk about it. Okay? That's a consequence, but in other words, an admonishment and an action. But the action's very little here.
Yeah, I jumped too far.
It's part of the escalation of you're going down the wrong path.
Yeah.
And before you get to the point where we're going to jump off the cliff into pain, we're going to remind you a little more seriously. And that's where it could be a little swat, it could be the reflective timeout, or anything else you can think of. But the idea is it's a very serious admonishment with something that goes as saying is, you're about to be in trouble. Okay? And again, why would it be there? Well, again, you're looking at the frequency, the age, are they the ringleader or just following along? What's the level of defiance you can see in them? You know, it can escalate very quickly if you can see it's directly defiant. But sometimes it's not. So you're coming from childish into they're stepping into foolishness. Yes, you're definitely on this path of foolishness. So before we get there, you just did that, and they do it again within an hour. Well, the frequency just went up, didn't it? That's why it's escalating. So that's why those first four things were important. I'm thinking through, what's the frequency of this? What's the character of the child overall? What's the age of the child? What's their actual involvement? Following or leading? Okay? All those things are factors of understanding something about what's going on in their heart. What's the defiance in their heart? So the fact that you said these boys say this while they're just being silly with each other, that doesn't sound like defiance. That sounds more childish than defiant. It sounds like they're just trying different rhyming words than, and they say something, they know they're just going to say it. And you know, for boys, that's going to be, they're going to start laughing about that. I know I shouldn't have said that, but I just did. Okay? So I just,
feel like with Raymond, he knows he shouldn't say it.
That's why,
And then
and
he's
he
saying
does,
it,
yeah.
and
Okay.
using, oh, we're laughing about it.
And now we're
but
laughing
Mommy
'cause
doesn't
they're
want
Yeah,
laughing
it's a
because,
bad
like,
word.
oh, I shouldn't have said that, but I
That's-
didn't mean to say it, but
Yeah.
in this context, it's funny. So
Yeah.
that's why you're going to increase. It's like you're not being careful. You're being silly, and I've used that. You're being silly. Your silliness is about to get you in trouble. Be more careful.
Okay.
Okay? He does it again, and very quickly. The frequency is higher. So now, is he really paying attention to you?
No, that's defiance.
Now we're entering
Yeah.
into defiance. And so now there's consequences. And of course, again, there's going to be a range of defiance. How defiant are they? You know, what's the level of defiance? And the more defiant, the greater the punishment. Okay? So it's could say it's a sliding scale.
Yeah.
Okay? So we start low
Makes
and we
sense.
move it up. But again, the punishment must coordinate to the crime that's been done. Punishment's got to fit the crime, whatever that is. So we don't want to over-punish with something that's really inconsequential, and we don't want to under-punish for something that's serious.
Yeah, and this is where it's so, I'm just so confused, because I
Okay.
guess I have to reevaluate now, like the frequency and how often I say it, because it is every day, you know, randomly a thing here.
Every day.
But it's gonna be like this for every day.
Every day.
The silliness, the word. So we're so.
Yeah.
Eventually, shouldn't it just
Until they
completely
have their
stop?
own place.
Alright, I guess now I have to look at, like what you said way before about, okay, are they making some progress? It's almost like I need a chart to like tally how many times did they say it today with me during this process. Okay,
Well, it doesn't have to be
tomorrow.
that,
No, no.
but you don't have to get that detailed with
No.
it. But you're looking for what is revealing the motive of their heart.
Yeah.
So again, step back, what's the big picture?
Yeah.
I want to train my children so that when they're adults and they go out in society, they're a blessing to society. I'd like them to become Christians, I can't control that. But I can put everything around them so they understand who Jesus Christ is, what God wants from them, and the consequences eternally if they don't follow Him. But I am responsible for training their character. So when they get out of my house, they should be able to function independently and be a blessing to society. That's my goal. That means I gotta train their heart. I gotta teach them to have a love for good, a love to do what is right because it's right, a love for other people and thoughtfulness for other people. I don't use those words because they're offensive to people. I don't use those words because they don't really communicate clearly the things that I would need to communicate. So all that's part of it, so that when they're out, they're people who can communicate intelligently about something rather than, a lot of times, even among my boys, among supposed professionals, professors and stuff, their language is so degraded. It's like, do you not recognize that using that kind of language only tells me that your intelligence isn't really that high? You should spend some time with the dictionary and learn some new words. And you only know the ones that are offensive to people? But we know they're using it on purpose to be offensive, which tells me you don't care at all about your students. So they don't even recognize it. I want my children to be different and recognize that the words I use are important. They reflect who I am. They reflect my ability to communicate things that should be important. So all that's part of it. Stewardship, I'm going to keep care of my things. I'm not going to be a leech on society because I can't take care of myself. I'm not going to be the one on the dole because I can't take responsibility for myself. No, I will purposely be on the other side where, yes, the government is stealing from me to pay for those who can't, but I'd rather be there because it's right. Or as Scripture actually says about it, is to work so you might have means by which to supply those who actually have a need. So I'm training their character. So that's what I'm looking for. At a toddler age, getting into 3s and 4s, I'm looking at what's their heart. And that's what I'm after training. Keeping that bigger picture in mind keeps you a little more sane, and I think helps navigate all these questions that come up because, let's face it, any one instance, you're really not always quite sure where they're at, unless it's very obvious. Okay? So that's why I'm looking. First, their age, your kids are young. As they're older, a lot of these questions like, you know better, I know you know better. You're looking at, are they a follower or the ringleader of this thing? If they're a follower, it's going to be a different admonition. Don't do what everybody else does simply because they're doing it.
And that could be like when you're with cousins, like the other day when we were at the house, and the 5-year-old cousin, obviously Raymond goes towards him and they're close,
Of course.
looks up to him, was saying all these other silly words that he told me, Raymond kind of told me, and I was like, but he said that. I go, right, but we don't say those words, those aren't kind. You can teach him those are not nice words to say, and you can tell him that, Raymond, and he was just like just stares, and it's like,
Okay, so there he's the follower, but with his brother he's the leader.
It's like you know what's right, but now you're leading and you're doing the opposite of what you.
But we all do that.
You know what too, Chris, and I find, Monique's later, I find even though sometimes it seems like when you tell them it's in a brick wall, a little bit sinks in. And all of a sudden one day it just clicked, like, wow, that actually, she just does it. Because it's sunk in, like, little things that we repeat, and it seems like for a whole week or so she's getting nowhere. Then all of a sudden it'll be like the next week and she's doing it, like right. And I'm like, oh wow, it finally
Wait
did.
2 months and she goes back.
Yeah.
What happened?
Yeah, and it's, exactly. And sometimes she goes back and goes through it, but like even when it seems like she's just going that wrong way, I realize that it does continually eventually does sink in on her, and she does it at times.
Yeah, that's true.
So you're looking at age, frequency, ringleader, not ringleader, what's their part in it, and what's the overall character of the child. If they're doing well everywhere else, and then this is the anomaly, it's different than where you're having a problem everywhere.
That's true.
Okay? So, our escalation of consequences takes all those factors into play as we're trying to think through what would be the proper consequence for this action. Okay?
Okay. That makes sense.
So this next page here, beginning of chapter 12, dealing with consequence and punishment, the little chart there is hopefully a little encouragement to you. Because when they're young, now by punishment we're talking basically about an artificial consequence. Okay? There's something we're going to bring upon them. We're going to bring an artificial pain upon them. And when they're young, that's mostly what you're doing. As they get older, there will be consequences. We call them natural consequences. Because of what they've done, this is what happens. And that's going to bring enough pain to start amending the behavior. And so as time goes on, there's less and less artificial punishment, and there's more greater consequences. But in the early years, you're in this stage of punishment or artificial consequences, as I would put it. Okay? So F1 is pain. It's a gift from God. It's not the result of Adam's fall into sin. It warns us that something is not right. It needs attention. It has one purpose. It helps a child focus and gain self-control over a particular moral weakness. That's your goal with pain. Okay? F2 is natural consequences. Rebellious, defiant acts will sometimes produce their own pain as a natural outcome of the foolish behavior. They fall off the bike, skin their knee, they break their toy, they lose a friend. There is a pain there. You don't have to bring an additional punishment to bear. They've already got a bad one. Okay? Now, they skinned their knee because they didn't do it the way you told them to do, and they fell down when you told them to be careful. You know, you may just say, well, this is why I warned you. I didn't want to see you happen, but you're still going to console them because now they are in pain. You're going to treat their wound. You're not going to say, I told you that, now go prepare yourself for being chastised. You don't need to, okay? There's enough pain going on, all right? The pain amends the behavior. It's a warning. You talk about how to treat your friends properly. They don't. They lose a friend. That's enough pain, okay? Now you're going to talk with them about why it happened and remind them that this is why I've been trying to tell you and teach you not to do these things. This hurts. It hurts to lose a friend. But you can console them at the same time. So those are natural consequences. Structured consequences is because there's not always natural consequences for foolish behavior. When it does not come naturally, it needs to be created artificially through structured consequences. Structured consequences come by way of chastisement, isolation, loss of privilege, or logical consequences. Structured consequences may take place in addition to or independent of chastisement. The parent must consider circumstances, the child's age, the motive behind the action when deciding which punitive measures would be best for the child. Whichever consequences the parent employs, it must be logically associated with the offense. Again, I can't emphasize that. Punishment must match the crime. It must have some sort of logical association. Okay? Otherwise, it doesn't teach the lesson that needs to be taught. Okay, F4, logical consequences. In general, the purpose of punishment help the child accept responsibility for his rebellious or non-rebellious actions. The type of consequences is subject to age consideration. Things such as abuse of a toy, loss of privilege of playing with the toy, neglect proper care of a bike, lose privilege of riding bike for a set time, fail to get ready in time to catch the school bus, you arrive late without a note for excuse. Okay, those are logical consequences. F5 is isolation. This is isolation. Pain is from the loss of social contact. Okay, this is not the same as a timeout. This is not a reflective timeout. Okay, this is different. Children are social beings. Isolation takes away the privilege of being in social contact. okay? One child's playing, continually disrupted the group play, and so the option is you isolate him, is you go play by yourself. And see, that fits even with your young kids. They want to be with the other kids, like, you're not playing with them properly, you know better, we're putting you over here, you'll have to play by yourself. That's very different than you're taking time out. Now, I may have used a timeout before I got there, right? They weren't playing well, so I tell them, you go sit in that chair for a while, you think about what you're doing because you're about to get in trouble. You've got to treat your friends properly. You've got to play properly. They come back in, they do the same thing. You lose the privilege of playing with your friends because you're not playing properly the way you should with them. You don't get to play with them. That is a privilege. You've just lost it. You see how it just escalated? So I'm working my way down. Now it's escalated. This is social contact.
And if you're out somewhere, then at that point, right, after you did the timeout, and then now you lost the social contact, you would then just leave that and go.
You might just say, well, you know what, we're going home.
Yeah.
Okay, now it could go very quickly. Now, let's say they're been characterized this for a while. Before you got the activity warning, how are you going to play? You used a dialogue question. We're going to go. We've had problems there. How are you going to treat your friends when you get there? You might be, are you going to do the things you did last time? And they say no. Well, now you know they understand intellectually. You get there, they go back and do the same thing. Do you do reflective timeout? No. Because the frequency has been higher, you've already just gone over it, and it's been a problem. So it becomes, the consequences become more immediate. So again, that goes back to those earlier things: frequency, age, ringleader, follower, or general behavior. General behavior here, we've been having a problem, so it's a more immediate into the consequence. In this case, it's a social behavior, you lose the privilege of playing with others. Do understand this, for different children, different pains are more important to them. Amazing enough for Jimmy, social contact was important to him when he was little. So isolation was one of those things that made him sit up and take notice, like, I'm in trouble and I don't like this. Because he wanted to be with other people. So other kids, you know what, they could care less. Great, now I don't have to deal with them. I get to go to my room, yes! Okay, so understand you're going to have to play with the personality of your child too, on what is the best consequence for your child. Okay, keep that in the back of your mind. And when you have multiples, they're not the same. Okay, they will be different. I don't know, is that encouraging or discouraging? I just got this one figured out. But this is one, okay? Isolation may accompany or follow chastening, but it's never to be used as a routine substitute for it. In other words, there's another, we're going to have a whole thing about chastisement here next. When a parent isolates a child to his room under these conditions, it should not be for play, but for contemplation. So it could be in your group play, you're not playing properly, you go play by yourself. Or it could be is you lose the privilege of playing. Okay? You're going to sit there and wait for me because we're going to come in and now you're going to be chastised. Okay? Or you don't be part of this group. Let's face it, we use that in group settings even here at the church for like our kids programs. The child is given a warning. The second warning, we talk to the parents. The third warning is, you're not welcome here until you get this corrected. Okay, so we want to escalate whether they're dealing with older children. Same kind of idea, you're going to be escalating this. Okay, does that help?
Yeah.
That's what we're talking about, isolation.
Yeah.
Okay?
I always associate them together as like isolation, as being you're isolated because now you're in timeout, but no, it's really isolation, you're removing them from the activity. They're not even getting like a 5-minute break and then they can try again. You're not playing that all day.
You're isolated because you weren't playing properly. If it was just a reflective timeout, you're going to think about this, and we're going to talk about it before you go back because you're about to be in trouble. They get in trouble again is you've lost the privilege. We can try again, and depending how bad it was, you can say we can try again in an hour, we can try again tomorrow, we can try again next week. You know, but there is a pain is you've lost the privilege because you weren't doing it properly. Now, chastening, there's a lot of biblical commands for chastening. I list them there in the notes. F5 is isolation.
and-
Isolation pain is the loss of social contact.
And then F6 was,
F6 is chastisement. Chastisement. Then there's a lot of verses there for you to look through. One time I was kind of shortening some of these and trying to put them on the church sign. I had a guy stop in when my office was still here at the church, and I couldn't believe I put these things up there. And I didn't have room to put the reference. And I asked him, are you a Christian? Yeah. You're familiar with the Bible? Yeah. I said, do you recognize that every single thing I put up there is straight from Proverbs? I think, well, you got to read the Bible, Go back to what it says. You're listening too much for the social services rising out of, secular psychology, and it doesn't work. It creates problems, not the other. Foolishness is bound up in the heart of a child. The rod of correction will drive it far from him. 13:24, he who spares his rod hates his son. He who loves him disciplines him promptly. Chasten your son while there is hope. Do not set your heart on his destruction. Okay, just all of these. You can't get around. There is a place for punishment. There's a place for chastising. Okay, but that fits under the broader category of discipline. But discipline includes primarily it's the encouragement, the instruction to do what is right. It also includes correction, and aspects of correction include chastisement. Okay, a punishment. Dropping down to Roman numeral 2 about chastisement. Definition, chastisement means to inflict pain with controlled force to amend an inner attitude. Okay? Inflict pain with controlled force to amend an inner attitude. Not to punish, but to train in righteousness. Keep your goal in mind. If your goal is to get rid of your anger, then don't touch your child. You're out of bounds. Okay? The cultural term for artificial consequences is spanking. The biblical term is chastisement. It's not for the purpose of punishing behavior or getting even with the child. God is not vindictive, and that's not the purpose of chastising. To remove spanking as a legitimate discipline option forces parents to use other but inappropriate methods to control their children's unruly behavior or abandon any reasonable standard or moral requirement. There's where we are as a society. Manipulating with guilt and or conditional love is often the method, and the deep scars of these methods are often permanent. A red mark from spanking is not. And tragically, this is where our society is at. The manipulation is horrible and people are messed up. Spanking is short, pain is gone very quickly, you're done. But it matches where we are as society too. We put people in prison for years and years and years. Not effective. The early founders of our nation, it was simple. There was a physical punishment of various sorts. It was done. There was a public shaming. It was over and done. You still continue to work. You still continue to fulfill your responsibilities. You're back in society. Now we remove them and put them in, what would I call it? Criminal college. It's not a good thing, but it all goes back to the same philosophy. We don't want to get caught up that in parents, as those are followers of Christ. We're not going to get into this manipulation stuff and using psychology on our kids, thinking somehow that that's going to be better for them. It's not. It makes it worse. When we look at spanking historically and culturally around the world, it's not a fabrication of Western Judeo-Christian beliefs. It is in all cultures. Because it works. In fact, some people insist spanking does not work, and they arrive at that conclusion from an ideological thought rather than practical experience. Of course spanking works. That's why the vast majority of parents around the world still use it. And even those against it. If it gets worse, bad enough, they'll still use it. There's a problem. So just a couple of things. If spanking teaches violence, how do you explain why children whose parents never spank them are so violent? If spanking teaches hitting or the abuse of power, how do you explain why children who are not spanked hit and abuse other children? If you watch children in the nursery, you don't have to teach them to hit. You don't have to teach them to steal. As they get older, you don't have to teach them to lie, because the problem is within man's heart. It's not, spanking is to amend the heart. It's to help develop an internal management by educating the child in moral principle. There will be times when control force is necessary to bring about the desired goal. Control without guidance is authoritarian. Guidance without sufficient control is permissive. The Bible encourages spanking but does not command it. Take that to heart. We support its use because it's part of wisdom literature, Proverbs, and is used in conjunction with righteous training, as listed in the scriptures that are in the previous page. Chastening or chastisement, righteous training are not mutually exclusive activities. They are partners in the same cause. Chastisement, the most intense, humbling form of corrective discipline. Biblical character training, on the other hand, represents the highest standard of moral training. They work in harmony together. Chastisement is ineffective as a corrective consequence if parents do not pay equal attention to the heart. If you're not aggressively working on your child's heart by teaching virtues of love, honor, self-control, we suggest do not spank your child. Chastisement means to inflict pain with controlled force on an individual to amend an inner attitude. Take note that it's not punishment, it's not to punish behavior, but to change the attitude leading to the wrong behavior. Okay? It's very different. If I'm against cultural spanking because it doesn't work right. It actually teaches them something that's wrong, and it becomes an expression of the parent's anger, and parents now in sin. Biblical chastening is going to help your child and help keep you from going directions you don't want to go. It actually keeps you from getting angry yourself because you know exactly what's there. It helps your child because they know exactly what the consequences will be. All right, here's some differences between the two. Cultural spanking is something parents do to a child. Biblical chastisement is something parents do for a child. Cultural spanking is a reaction activated by frustration. Biblical chastisement is a response activated by rebellion. Cultural spanking is used as a punishment of last resort. Biblical chastisement is not an act of punishment, but of love. Cultural spanking attempts to change outward behavior. Biblical chastisement is used to change attitudes of the heart. Cultural spanking is performed throughout a child's life. Biblical chastisement, if it's done correctly, is nearly completed by age 5. You're pretty much done. Now there are stubborn ones that you're going to slip over into maybe 6, 7, even 8. Others, they're going to learn quickly and you're done by 4. Okay, so it's something that occurs early in life, and that's why that chart that I gave you, these artificial consequences when they're young are high, but very quickly they start dropping and natural consequences come up as the means of correction. Cultural spanking frustrates the child. Biblical chastisement clears the child's guilty conscience. Cultural spanking has no long-term purpose or effect. Biblical chastisement molds lifelong character. Cultural spanking is used by most Christians. Biblical chastisement is rarely used by anyone. There's a proper way to do things and improper way to do it. All right, let's talk about when to chastise. Offenses that require chastisement are those related to rebellion. Rebellion is a heart issue. It includes defiance, disrespect, disobedience, willful failure to learn to remember. A child who constantly says, "I forgot," is as much rebellion as a child who directly disobeys. That's one of those passive rebellion aspects. The sensation of pain draws attention to foolish decisions that can lead to wrong behavior. Children are impulsive by nature. Chastisement serves as a mentor to teach a child to become a master over his foolish impulses and not the slave of them. Okay? First, chastisement is a personal matter. Parents should always consider the dignity of the child when chastening. Therefore, chastisement should always be a private matter between the parent and the child. Or if they're all guilty, the parent and the children. Sometimes they all just get in together. Line them up. 2, chastisement should not be done in public, nor should it be done out in public. Okay, so the goal here is not to embarrass your child into right behavior, nor to intimidate the child by making a public example of him. So no, we don't chasten our kids out in public. You're going to, it's much worse on you, but you remove them from the public and take them to a place that is private. You know, the old adage, you know, well, I'm taking them back behind the woodshed. All right, why behind? It's because it's private. It's not out in public. It's a private thing. Okay, we're going to take you off someplace so we can deal with this privately. That's the idea. 3, chastisement should not be done in front of other people. That includes other adults, unrelated children, and only rarely in front of siblings. Really, the only time it's in front of siblings is when they're all guilty of the same thing at the same time. Okay, then they can reinforce with each other. We're all in trouble because we all got involved in this. 4, chastisement should not be done on bare skin. Okay, you're not trying to, in fact, if you're causing physical harm, then you're not chastising properly. Okay? If you're bruising, then you're using the wrong implement, or you're striking too hard, or striking the wrong area. You don't do it over thick material like jeans. There's no pain involved. But definitely, you may have to pull the pants down, but the underwear is on. You're not embarrassing them on that. Well, if you're changing a baby's diaper and they start moving around, you say no. You can take your hand and just whack them a bit.
Yeah, but I would call
But-
your pants on doing your own.
Well, if you got a diaper on, you have no choice, okay? So this is talking as you're getting a little older, they're potty trained, but let's put it this way, if they're old enough to be wearing underwear, you keep the underwear on. If they're not that old, you're probably not gonna be doing it there anyways, you can use the thigh, the upper thigh, okay?
I go back and forth with Joe. I would do it on his thigh, but then I put on the
Yeah, it
diaper.
gets serious, okay, we're getting something with more meat on it. Okay, the thigh, it's just,
Yeah.
you're trying to get a high sting. See, 5, children should be spanked on the bottom. That would include the thigh, the upper thigh. Young children, okay, hand offense when they're young, they're reaching for things, okay, that's a hand offense. And again, it's a sting, it's just a slap. It's not whack, you know, it's hard. It's a sting, it's a slap. You're just trying to create a high sting with, no, don't touch that. What they're talking about here is you're not socking them, you're not whacking them upside the head. There's a proper way to do it. We're not trying to hurt the child, we're trying to cause a sting. Okay, there's a difference.
So when you do a hand offense, it shouldn't be in front of other people?
You can do, that's different, that's,
Oh.
you do that immediately because
Yeah.
the hand offense is for young kids, they're trying to get into everything. So you're trying to make sure the association immediately, they're reaching for the stove, you say no. They keep reaching, you just take your hand, and it's just a whack. I said no, that's all it takes. Okay, if they're older and they're still doing it in their defiance, you're gonna take them off, and now you're gonna chasten them on the bottom. But usually the hand offenses, they just keep reaching for things they shouldn't, and that's up through toddlers, that's about it. After that, you're not having that problem. Because if they're that old, now you're dealing with heart issues that have to be dealt with. A hand offense generally has more to do with behavior. They're ignorant, they don't know what they're doing, they're trying to do something, and it's serious. That's why they're reaching for the stove. They're going to get hurt and burned. So let's face it, that is not nearly as hurtful as second-degree burns on your hand. They're reaching for the Ming vase at your grandparents' house. No, okay? But you should have been training that at home anyways, not to leave the magazine you left purposely on the coffee table to teach them not to touch things unless they have permission. So that's why I said that hand offense thing is something that's really when they're very young, and is over fairly quickly, okay, in the scheme of their life. I know in the moment that you're doing this, it's just like, oh, he's trying to.
What about when they were, like you were saying, not done in front of other people, but like not in front of siblings? Like when Joseph was in the high chair, and I'm thinking now, like when they were little and they would just throw him in, like Joseph would do the food, and I'd take him out and say, no, we don't throw food. I did the hand, but that wasn't working. But it worked when I finally got to the bottom. But Raymond was sitting there eating while I'm, disciplining
I'll
Joseph.
just take him off in the other room.
I really should have just taken him
Yeah,
off.
just take him off.
Because Raymond saw it more, obviously, because I never really chastised Raymond until more.
Well, until he
recently.
needed it.
Yeah, until he was really defiant, where it was
Okay.
like just strong.
So this becomes the next one. That is number 6. Avoid last resort spanking, which is where a lot of people go. It's like, I'm finally to the point. This is where the counting comes in.
No more
And
counting.
but no. If you train the first time obedience, there's no question, okay? The child's no longer guessing about how far do I get to push her before it finally gets serious. There's no guess. It's like, it's either yes or no. You did or didn't do it. So which is it? Okay, it's simple. So it just makes it very objective. You either did or didn't do it. The last resort thinking, spanking also that is done because the parent has finally reached a emotional point that they're taking action. And they should have taken action a long time ago. That's not helpful to the child. Deal with it earlier is better for the child than escalating it.
I have a question. So, like, what about disciplining in front of, like, my parents or grandparents?
Definitely not.
Oh. Like,
No, take 'em
not
into another
hand
room.
offense, but what about the hand?
No, I had,
Oh.
I've got to make this thing. Hand offense is very early. You're doing it more for safety reasons than anything else, because they're doing something that either is going to be dangerous to them, or is something that if they get into this, it's going to cause a problem. They're going to break an expensive vase. They're getting into things that are dangerous, chemicals, things like that. They're putting things in their mouth they shouldn't. So, that's a no.
So a hand offense, like the other day I did with Joseph, which now I'm thinking I shouldn't have done it, was when he took the remote control again, and I said, we don't touch the remote control
that's
because he
fine.
likes to do those buttons. And so I had said, Joseph, we don't take it, and I did, remember, no remote control.
It's fine.
Okay, because that was not a dangerous thing.
It's
just a thing I don't
okay,
want
hand
to do.
offense is because they're grabbing things. That's what we're talking about.
Oh,
So
okay.
they're grabbing things all the time. You're trying to keep them of a self-control that's very quick, okay? Okay, if you're chastising, there's a more personal element here because you're exposing them, okay? Other people don't need to see their underwear.
Yeah, but like, let's say, like, I hit her hand, like, around my mom, oh, you shouldn't do that. So, then,
I'd say, Mom, then you should have. Because you
Well,
probably can say, because you sure did to me.
cause then it
No,
ends up
she didn't.
being not disciplining when we go around her.
No.
And that's bad.
well, the thing I think we talked about too is just dealing with that. I think is just letting her know that we are going to do it to hand. Like we do I still do the hand offense or whatever too, or we just learn with them when around her parents just to take her in the back and do the cause her to do the hand offense and doing that. I think that's better. I mean, that's the thing I find with her and just explain to her too. But it's I guess for us, it's got to be done right away. And doing it, I guess.
Well, that's the whole point. The whole idea of this hand offense is something it's quick. It's because it's in the immediate moment of a very quick lesson of no. It doesn't. Again, it's just a slap, a sting. Just a no. I said no. They know you're serious. Okay. They're usually not at the intellectual point. They just understand you're upset. Okay, there's something bad here, so you're getting their attention. I said no. So you're trying to reinforce that very quickly. Don't reach the stove. Because it all comes back to the self-control issue. Okay, your kids are a little older. You're not spanking Raymond anymore, or Rebecca that way. You're not having to slap her hand anymore, are you?
Once in a while.
Once in a while, okay. But it's rare compared to what it was.
Yeah.
Why? They've learned. Okay? They don't reach for the stove anymore. It only takes a couple times. Well, again, slapping the hand is better than getting burned. Okay? But once they get burned, that's a lesson that sticks in there. But we're not cruel parents of saying, okay, we'll just let them touch it and find out. that's cruel. Okay, we're going to keep them from doing that. If you're at your parents' house and they don't care what your kids get into, but if you're at home, there's a different standard. Okay, you can still say no, and apparently it offends your parents, so don't do it in front of them because you're trying to be gracious to them too. But you can still say her no, and then you remove her. Okay, for whatever, because again, the hand defense is the idea, I'm trying to grab things I shouldn't.
So it's
I
not
want them
like
to.
a punishment?
Huh?
It's not a punishment?
No.
It's just like, I think I was doing it as a punishment.
Well, it's more of a reminder because you're, again, the blend here comes from this. A high sting reinforces what you just said, that the no means stop, put your hands away. Now, as they get older, they may still want to touch things, but you can train them to do things like, we taught, Jimmy was always reaching for things, so we taught him this. Someone else told us this, like, okay, we're going to the store, I want you to have self-control. That meant for him, he did this. If his hands were in his pockets, he couldn't touch things. So that's how he had to go into stores. He always had to have his hands in his pockets because it eliminated all sorts of problems. Otherwise, he'd be touching things. And if you have that problem as an adult, put your hands in your pockets. It will help. Okay? If you overshop, put your hands in your pocket. You won't be able to buy it. Okay? So you're learning strategies. But when they're young, it's an immediate thing of a no means no, immediate. Okay? If they're getting older, like Monica's getting a little older now, or if you're in an environment where it's public, okay, you're out shopping and they're trying to do something and they're reaching, you got a different issue. Okay, you may have to take them out of the public area.
I actually dealing with that, I don't think, I don't know. I've done this there and I find it does work because it's more discreet, especially in the public area. She's touching stuff and I know, I think we talked about last time now, even a kid's hand, people are watching or cameras are watching too and stuff. I've taken her arm like this and I just grabbed it tightly. And not like super tight, and then she goes, oh, it's hurting, and then I know she's got my point. Yeah.
You can also, in the public, you can just grab her hand and move it away, and I said no, and just squeeze it, not hard, just the squeeze, like you say, or your arm, move it away, okay? But we're going to keep the punishment, especially in this day and age. Any physical punishment we need to do, in a physical chastening, whether it's a hand slap or proper chastening, we're going to remove it from the public eye, which means we may have to leave the store, we may have to leave the immediate vicinity of relatives. Your parents, they don't like it, you may have to go in another room, or you may have to leave. And which includes, like, well, Monique's acting up so much, then it's just time for us to leave. Okay? It's unfortunate we're in that kind of society, but let's face it, people have a lot of tolerance for, and I'm going to say, it's brats. It's brats in the stores. They're out of control, and they're knocking things over, and everybody has tolerance for that. But boy, you do anything to reprimand your child, you're a terrible person. We have a sick society, okay? Because they think you're terrible, and it's like, and I'm looking at, you're a terrible parent for allowing what they're doing. Or these little 4-year-olds that have uncouth things coming from their mouths, are like, whoa. But then you hear the parent go, whoa, no wonder.
Yeah, you're
That's
too
all.
strict.
The parents have a 100-word vocabulary. 50 of them are scatological. Well, that's horrible. But we recognize that. So we're going to be wise in what we're doing, how we're doing it, but we always remembering we're after the child's heart. Don't get lost in the hand spanking. That hand offense is an immediate thing trying to amend a behavior that's not necessarily moral, but there's a safety concern here. Or there's a concern for what doesn't belong to them. There's an innocence. Joe grabbing remote is it's something to play with. It's not a toy though. So we're teaching him. It's not defiance.
But is
Until-
it if it becomes, what's that word?
Repetitive,
Repetitive,
because you
yeah,
keep
or
telling him and he keeps
frequency.
grabbing it, then the frequency goes up, then it becomes, okay, Joe, you got a problem here, you define. Mommy said no, don't touch it. It means it starts escalating.
And then I would do the other steps.
Then the other steps start coming in. So again, the whole thing is an escalation. The same thing with chastisement. It's not the last resort, okay? You should have where this is what's going to happen, and they should know it. This is why it's, hand offenses are for the little ones. As they get older, you're gonna graduate more into chastening on the buttocks or the upper thigh, and you're just trying to create a high sting. The amount of strikes they get are going to escalate. The implement you use is going to escalate as they get older in order to create enough sting. The pain of the offense has got to be greater than the pleasure of the sin. Okay? I'll repeat that one. The pain of the offense must be greater than the pleasure of the sin. If it's not, you're getting nowhere. So it's not a last resort spanking. That's a terrible way to do it.
So then when Raymond said thank you,
You're confused.
I know, I'm like, so then I had to do it again harder because I'm like, well, this should hurt. I remember when you said that a while
Well, I'd
ago,
ask
I'm
him
like,
first, why are you thanking me?
well, that's why I didn't even ask him because I think I was so like caught off guard, like, you
Pull
really
a new
just
one on
say
you.
thank you after I did this?
Well, he's an
I know he didn't
astute,
want it.
understanding young man. He
Yeah, he
understands you're doing that as love. Thank you, Mommy, for loving me so much to chasten me.
But this was him already
I
waiting.
don't think so.
Because we were in the car and I had told them when we get inside, remember you're both in timeout and Mommy will be there to discipline you. So they
Okay.
went there and I did my thing, and then that's when he stood up and then it was like ready. Okay, Mommy, this isn't gonna hurt. Like, so like I don't know. It was so like was
We'll
he
get into
preparing?
that.
Okay, yeah. Because I
We're
don't know if
gonna
it's
get
good or
into
bad.
that.
I don't know.
All right, so don't avoid last resort spanking. It's not your last resort. It's in the mix of all the things you already have objectively determined. You do this, this is the consequence. You do this is the consequence. Okay, that's the whole point. You're going to be training them so they know if they do certain things, this is what happens. If you're not, that's the admonishment. If you do this, this is what's going to happen. That's the warning. And then it happens. It could be the isolation, could be loss of privilege, could be, yes, you're going to get so many strikes of chastisement, okay? You're determining that beforehand, so they know. That way, it's actually very objective. Guess who determines whether they get chastised then? The child does. And we use that constantly. You know, they did something and it'd be, okay, boys, what's going to happen now? And they would tell us, okay? So who decided that this was going to happen? Okay? Because it was up to them. There is no chastisement if they do what is right. Now you see the tie back into the heart. So it's not punishment as the world thinks of it. It's not cultural spanking. It's the tie directly to the heart to amend the heart. Helping them understand by bringing pain to bear, there is a consequence for wrong decisions.
And you do, you know what, and that's in the classroom too, and that just made me think of like I would tie that back as when I'm sitting with them after they're in their timeout, and we talk about it, and they said, well, who made this choice? Because they, you know, Mrs. Duffy didn't do this, or Mrs. Duffy's the mean teacher. No, it wasn't my choice. You chose not to listen, so that's why you're not having recess.
Exactly.
So you're right. I didn't. Here it goes back
That's
to.
the exact tie.
But I need to say that to a 3-year-old. I can say that to a 3-year-old basically, and I haven't said that. But if I say it to
Yes.
them, they'll should start to understand. No, I didn't put you in timeout. I didn't put you here. You did because you made the wrong choice.
Okay? The actions you take result in this. Now, the positive side though, when it's rewards for like skill development, the actions you take gain this. If it's moral behavior, the actions you take bring about pleasure within the family. It will bring about occasional rewards. It always will bring about, you're going to get a verbal encouragement, you're going to get an admonition instead of an admonition. You're going to get a hug, you're going to get positive things by doing what is right. You get praise. So who decides whether you get praise or punishment? The child does. So you've moved this into them of what's in their heart. That's what we're after. We want to train the child's heart. So that when they're older and adults, that's what motivates them. Okay? That's what we're after. 7, if you're going to spank, you must be consistent with the standard and your spanking. Okay, parents who do not require first-time obedience spank subjectively. That is, the parents subjectively determine the chastisement, often based on mood, whims, and other external factors, sometimes totally unrelated to the child's actions. Today I'm upset, so you're in danger. Today I'm feeling good, so you can get away with anything. That's all subjective. Parents who spank subjectively are guilty of encouraging the child's irresponsible behavior by tempting him to sin. Why? Because children are gamblers by nature. The subjective approach serves to encourage them and take the chance. I got away with it yesterday, I bet I can do it again today. When spanking is used as subjective last resort, punishment becomes perilously close to abuse, because it's usually related to how angry the parent is. And it's no longer, because it's not objective. 8, the goal of chastisement is not to humiliate or shame the child into right behavior, nor intimidate the child by making the child a public example, which actually repeats some of the stuff earlier. So, chastisement and punishment are not intangible words referring to the same action. There's only one type of chastisement. There are many types of punishment. Chastisement is always associated with rebellion, but rebellion is not always corrected by chastisement. Child knows when he has broken the rules, and his guilt continually reminds him of his violation, and that guilt is that reminder of sin. Chastisement is the price paid to remove the guilt, thus freeing the child from his burden. If the parents do not remove the guilt, the child lives under the weight of that sin. Hebrews 12:11. No chastening seems to be joyful for the present, but painful. Nevertheless, afterward it yields the peaceful fruit of righteousness to those who have been trained by it. So, that's important for us. You do not want to break the will of the child, but rather the selfish expression of the will. Instead of breaking the will, the parents should train the child so he can gain control over his own will. You do not break the child's spirit by teaching, training, correcting, and living to God's standard. The Bible further establishes support for chastisement by statements made in regard to the natural object used for chastisement, the rod of reproof. Parents should not chastise their children with anything stiff and unbending. A wooden spoon could possibly break fingers that get in the way, cause vertebral damage if struck too high on the back, or damage skin tissue. I used to cause bruising, and yet how often I've ended up talking to secular people saying, yeah, use a wooden spoon. No. Don't use a wooden spoon. It's a stiff object. It causes bruising, or even worse. Nor should we chastise an instrument that is too flexible, such as a father's belt, depending on what kind of leather he's got, a wire, or any whip-like object. The reason is that it ends up causing welts and actually can bruise the skin immediately or even break the skin, okay? So instead, it's a flexible instrument, something to sting without inflicting bone or muscle damage. The flex absorbs the shock. If you can find the wider belts, like an 1 or 2 inch wide, thick leather belts, those work pretty well, but not the whole length. Maybe like that much. And as they get older, you can increase it, because you may need a little more action on it. But it should be something, when you hold it up, it may bend a little bit, but if it flops, that's too flexible. If it's rigid, that's too stiff. If it'll bend a little bit, then it's probably got enough flexibility. And the wider it is, the more it covers an area so that the sting is high, but you're not actually bruising anything. You're not causing physical damage. So those things work well. We actually made some for ourselves out of old belts, wide belts, not narrow like this. Had some nice big wide ones. Maybe not quite as wide as a guitar strap. But they were stiff leather. Now another thing that we have found since is those spatulas with the rubber.
I'm using that.
Okay, those actually are very good. Okay, but not the ones with the wooden handles. Trying to find the ones with the plastic handles,
Yeah.
because they're usually wide enough that they cause a high sting, and they're not going to bruise. The problem is if you get anything that hits it on edge, you can end up bruising the skin, and you don't want to bruise. You just want to cause a high sting. Always try out the instrument on yourself first. Know what it feels like. Okay? So try it out on yourself. You're trying to create a sting. And remember, it's going to be different on different children. David and Jimmy both had a very high tolerance for pain. Jonathan was much more sensitive. It took much more for them to get their attention. How often, how many strikes depends on the offense, and that escalates up and down, again, depending on the child and as amending the behavior. So, in this case, well, let me go back to what this says and we'll go back to that. What should you do? No, let's go back to this. All right. How many strikes? It depends on the offense. Depends on the seriousness of the offense. It depends on the child, the age of the child, and their pain tolerance. The sting has to be enough. There has to be enough pain that it stops behavior. If your child is smiling when you're done, it's not strong enough. Okay? Now understand, some children will start crying as soon as you walk in the room, thinking it's going to alleviate the problem. Unfortunately for some it will, because, oh, you're already so upset, I'm not going to do anything. No, you're still going to chastise them. Okay? So it's not necessarily the amount of crying, but let's put it this way. If there is nothing, you may need to escalate. That means you need to get, instead of the small little spatula, let's get the big one, okay? It's got a bigger area and get some whack on it. But make sure you try it yourself first. You should know what it feels like. How many? Again, it may be amount of how many does it take to them finally to understand the pain level. Now you can also compound it. For example, for us, we made a big serious issue about lying. You may have done this and you may only get a couple swats. You lie to us, it escalates. Seriously. Because we did not want lying in our family. Period. Because once you break that trust, you're done. It is really difficult if you can't trust what's going on in your family. You've got to have that trust. So we would add it. It's so many for this and so much for lying. Sometimes it was, okay, you're not even going to get anything for this because you were honest, you told us what you did, and you're going to take the consequence, you're going to replace what you broke. But you lied to us about it, so go prepare yourself. Okay, that'd be the difference. So you can multiply things as well. Okay. He has at the bottom of the page how many times spanked. These are rough guidelines because there is no hard and fast rule, because again it depends on your child, their pain sensitivity, the instrument you're using, a lot of factors. But very young, under 2 years, 1 to 3, more than that's going to be very rare. It's just you're trying to create enough pain to get them to understand this behavior's got to stop. If they're up to 3 years of age, maybe 1 to 5. Because a lot of times 1 is all it takes. It's a reminder. It escalates, you're going to need more. 3 to 5, it could be more than 5 swats on occasion. Okay? The point is this: the older the child, the more serious the offense, the more swats they may receive. In this case, other forms of punishment will probably need to accompany it. So it could be, is they're going to be chastised and isolated from the social context. They're going to be chastised and lose the privilege of whatever toy they were playing with or thing they were using. They can't use anymore because they used it inappropriately. So you can add that together. Again, the whole goal is whatever the pain is, it's got to be greater than the pleasure of the sin. If it's not, you're not amending the heart. And we're after the heart. Okay. Go to the next page and I'll come back on what to do afterward. The following list summarizes why chastisement may fail to be an effective tool of discipline. 1, parents use the wrong instrument. It doesn't cause any pain. All right? I am not an advocate of using your hand. In fact, I'm kind of against it for a couple of reasons. For one, I have a pretty good sized hand. If your hand is small, it might be appropriate, but I could damage my kids' big hand. Second is I want my hand to be an instrument that if I'm reaching out my child, the hand is love, not fear. I don't want to go to hug my child and they back away because they're afraid I'm going to hit them or something. My hand, I don't want that associated with my hand. An instrument is independent. Now if you're using one of those spatula things, maybe they have a problem with baking and scraping pans out, I don't know, but It's not associated with people, so it's still okay. It's a different association. 2, parents sweat hard enough to get the child upset, but not hard enough to outweigh the pleasure of sin. That's why it doesn't work. So now they're just mad at you, but not enough to them to sin. 3, parents chastise through clothing that's too thick, so it doesn't cause any pain. Or as I still remember, even in junior high, there's still corporal punishment, and the kids were always getting in trouble. I used to use a big wooden paddle about this big, had holes in it. Gym teachers usually did it, and the kids would learn how to get wallets or something down their pants, so when they got hit, it really wouldn't do anything, but they'd make out like it was bad.
I'm sure those classes were very well behaved.
There was much better behavior
Compared
back
to where they
then.
are now.
Parents talk too much, hoping to persuade by logic. When they're older, yes, but not when they're little, okay? Parents are inconsistent. They fail to establish clear boundaries, are afraid the child will not love them, okay? So, we're going to take a break, and we'll come back to this. Last break, and then we'll probably pass one. All you have to do is